What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I am just gonna try and tie up any loose ends that I have on the black Cadillac and see if I can get into anything on the red car that isn't too crazy. I'm trying to get this car done and get the clutch back in it, but I've been waiting for a week and a half for my LS7 flywheel. So hopefully tomorrow it'll be done. And I just got the one that was in it. I got it cut, nothing crazy. It's already the LS7 flywheel. I put the Enki Kojins on the front, a little more aggressive wheel spec than what I had before, so they're probably not going to fit with a front bumper on. But I think 5-spoke wheels look sweet on these cars, and I'll ultimately be using that wheel on this car. In the rear, I have RS05 with a silver RS05 with new tires. Because on my RS05s that I normally run on this, I got to get new tires mounted on them. But I want to make sure the clutch and all is good before I jump to the next thing. This thing is ready to go. You saw in the previous video that I did the rear main seal. My transmission here is all sealed up. I took this top plate off, sealed it. I did new bushings here. I just painted this bracket right here, the shifter bracket. I already have polyurethane bushings in here, and I did the new speed sensor, which you also saw in the last video. Coming around here, I did a new LS7 slave cylinder. I got the line all in here. I notched the transmission a little bit this time just for the clutch line to come out. And then I decided this time, instead of going and having to bleed from under the car, I ended up going with the Tick Performance speed bleeder for the CTS-V, which has a nice little speed bleeder end here that'll be up in the engine bay. It'll make bleeding that clutch much easier. Now with the T56 for the red car, I basically did the same thing. I ended up sealing the whole end case because I had it off. I sealed the top cover here, and I did new rev shift polyurethane bushings right here and painted this and did the same bushings right here. So I have two T56s that are ready to go in the two CTS-Vs, but we don't have any clutches. So that is the issue. We have no clutches in the car. So hopefully tomorrow, Monday, the flywheel will go back into this thing and I will be able to get the trans back in and move to the next step. And then for the red car, the motor and trans is ready to go back in, but I don't have a clutch kit for it either. We're getting closer to figuring out a clutch kit situation for this, so I'm hoping within the next few weeks, we'll be, maybe next 2 to 3 weeks, I'm saying, we'll be able to drop the engine into this thing and start getting it wired up. So I think, honestly, today, I'm gonna get under the black car. The black car, it's a Northeast car, and it has some rust underneath and whatnot. It has some typical CTS rust, like where in the frame rail, if you V guys and CTS guys will know that they had that one spot on the frame rail on each side that loves to rust. It has that. That fix will be for a later date because I'll actually have to cut the frame and do some patchwork. And then what I'm gonna do under here today is just go through. There's some spot welds and things like that the paint under the car had come off. So I'm gonna hit it with a wire wheel and just hit it with some paint and protect it further from any rust in those areas. The bigger areas of rust we will get to down the line. But we have a couple other projects in order, one of them being rust on the truck that need to be addressed first. All right, guys, so I got some stuff painted up on the bottom side of the black V. You guys don't need to see the rust on that thing, but I got some areas down to bare metal, got them painted just with some good paint, and pretty much good to go on that. Again, waiting for the trans to get in. So I pulled the engine harness from this car out of the back seat, and what we have here is a full LS6 engine harness that I labeled and just basically carefully took out of the car when I pulled the engine. Thankfully, nothing had to get cut or nothing ripped or failed. There are some areas that I will address, like this guy right here. For example, on the CTS-V starters, they use this plastic plug for the trigger wire. Well, over time, this plastic deteriorates from heat. You can kind of see some discoloration there. and because of that discoloration and the heat, it will break and crack. This one looks like it looks like they replaced the starter, because I know they replaced the starter, and it looks like they already put a new pigtail on here. So the alternative, which is what I have on this car, is to run the 6-liter truck starter, and you put a regular ring terminal on there, and it gets rid of this clip-on connector. But since this looks to be in good shape right now, I think what I'm gonna do is keep it, but I am gonna redo this connection. So this connection is not weatherproof, and it is just kind of crappy looking. All this wiring right here is heat insulated because it goes down by the exhaust manifold. With the headers on there, I am gonna have to order some more heat insulation so that I can further cover these. With the long tubes, you know, there are some wires that you need to cover up. These guys go down along the side of the engine with it, and the main wire is your starter wire coming off the battery. But since I'm gonna be doing a different routing for it, I'll be sure to route it away from the heat on the header. So then we have like these other pigtails here. These guys go down around the transmission. So these are like the transmission temperature sensor right here. I think this is for the speed sensor right here. So these guys I didn't really label because they just kind of drape down. This one is the secondary O2s, which I'm not going to be using, and whatnot. So I'm just going to try and get this thing laid out so that it makes sense, like it's draped over an engine, and then go from there and start going through and seeing what I can further clean up. Like this guy is just a ground. I think that goes to one of the heads. This is on the back of one of the heads, I think. It is, because then this is the injector wires for that head and all that. So yeah, just going through and seeing what we can clean up and seeing what we can relume just to make it look nicer, because GM loves using this plastic wiring loom with electrical tape. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, and I want to make sure there's no breaks or splits in any wires that we can see that might have rubbed through or anything like that, and you know, relieve us from ever having any wiring issues on this car. So I have the engine harness laid out here. So acting like this end of the table is the back of the engine, top of the bell housing. We have our 2 splits that go on each side of the transmission. We have our 2 splits right there. And then we have our starter cable side that goes down around the engine to the starter. We have our primary O2 sensors right here. And then we move to the back of the heads. So the back of each cylinder head has a ground wire that grounds out the injectors and coil packs. So we have our cam sensor that plugs in right here in the back of the engine, our oil pressure sensor, and our knock sensors that go into the knock sensor harness that goes under the intake manifold. Coming up to the top, we have 4 fuel injectors per side. And then we have our big white plug here that plugs into the coil pack harness. So the coil pack harness is on the coil pack bracket and it plugs in right there. So, and then the cam sensor is here, oil pressure sensor here, and the knock harnesses, the knock sensor harness sits underneath of the intake manifold like so, and plugs in right there. So moving further forward, we have our throttle body connection right here. We have our second throttle body connection right here. So on the throttle body, that'll be this one and this one for the idle air control. This is our throttle body actuator, and this is our IAC right here. And then we move off the engine. So we have our MAF sensor wire that'll go right into the intake towards the driver side like so. And then we have some connections and the AC pressure switch right there. Those 2 connections are down here, and then we have our pressure switch right there for the AC. And then we have, moving further forward down, we have our coolant temp sensor, which goes into the side of the cylinder head right there, and it just goes further and further down. Like we get down around to our alternator and the ECU, down the wheel well, and then we have our ABS wiring here. We have our speed sensor, ABS sensor, speed sensor wiring right here. And this guy, I don't really know what this one goes to. this one is for the ABS pressure switch. So I'm assuming this is something ABS related. We'll figure it out. On the passenger side, we have this main FB1 plug that goes into the fuse block. This goes into a throttle control box on the chassis, which is right here. So that guy plugs in there. The other one comes through here and plugs into the fuse box. And I'll show you where that goes. Right in there, clips in. And then moving further back, these two plug in on the passenger side fender. There are two plugs right back in here that go into like the body harness and whatnot. So those guys plug in. I can show you on this car. Right in there, you can see those plugs there. They go into the body harness. So it's relatively simple. Comparing what I'm used to with the 3000 GT, these cars are super simple and they are over 10 years newer. The chassis harnesses on these cars, from what I've been able to decipher, I mean, yes, there's modules and whatnot inside the car, but it's still relatively simple. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run to the parts store. I'm gonna get some electrical connection cleaner. I'm gonna see what they have as far as loom, heat insulation and whatnot. I might have to order some stuff online because, you know, the parts store doesn't carry much of that stuff. And I'm gonna try and get this harness cleaned up today. There are some connections, like the oil pressure sensor, that is disgusting with oil. So I'll get some electrical connector. We'll get all these electrical connectors cleaned up, ready to go. All right, so I just got back from the parts store and we got the basics. Some brake parts cleaner on sale, and we got some mass airflow cleaner. So I was initially just gonna do the electromotive cleaner, but since we're gonna be spraying the connectors that are plastic, and also I'll probably clean the MAF as well. So I figure I killed two birds with one stone. And obviously, you know, by cleaning the electrical connectors, I'm gonna get a 4 to 10 horsepower gain. So, you know, it just makes sense. But anyways, this is good for plastic as well, where the electromotive said not to try to avoid using it on plastic. So this should do the job to get it done here. And then I also just got a regular oil filter, nothing crazy. Just to get started with on the LS6. So I'm gonna take some 20 weight oil here, put a little dab around the outside of this guy and swirl it around, and then get this thing put onto the LS6. So let's see, we'll get a rag and we'll get down under here and just simply spin that guy on to the oil pan, and we're good to go. That'll be perfect for break-in and getting this thing all situated. So I plan on running just like regular 530 oil to break it in. It's already been broken in, but I just plan on running just some regular oil, let it heat cycle a couple times, wash out all of that assembly lube, and then drain it, new filter, fill it with some good like Redline 2050 or something like that. So now I'm gonna shift focus to the wire harness. So the wire harness here, let me get down in it. So for the wire harness, I'm presented with just dirty connections. This one being a prime example. So we'll get some paper towels to wipe with, but this is the oil pressure sensor plug. And basically it was leaking out through the harness part of the whole thing. So I'm just going to spray it down And then dry it. Get all that oil residue crap off of it. And this mass airflow cleaner also smells a lot better than brake clean, I will say that too. Clean the wires around it, and we'll have a nice oil-free plug for when I plug it into that fresh new sensor, and hopefully that way we'll get a readout on the cluster, which I wasn't getting when I first bought the car and whatnot. I'm gonna set you guys on a time lapse. I'm gonna go through the harness and we'll see how clean we can get this thing. Guys, so I think we've got ourselves a nice, much cleaner harness. As you can see on plugs like this and this guy here, we got our wires clean, we got our plugs cleaned up. There were other ones that had oil, like this cam sensor plug right here, and it is now nice and clean. So all of the plugs are relatively clean. The ones that are under the car I didn't go too wild with, like the ones that along the transmission, but there were a couple that were kind of gunked up, so I did make it a point to clean them and scrub them up. So we're in good shape here. I have some loom, some braided loom that I had already, and I think I'm gonna try to address this MAF section right here, and then redo the loom, hit this like whole junction with some fresh electrical tape, which I'm not a fan of, but GM was. So I'm gonna peel back what I can and retape it, and I'll reloom the MAF wires themselves. GM really outdid themselves when it came to using tape. Wow, they taped it again afterwards. There we go. MAF sensor wiring is nice and loomed up with the nicer loom, and I think we're good to go with that. So I would say I'm gonna go through and keep cleaning this up, and potentially add more of this style loom to it. Looks like we're in good shape as far as the harness goes. I didn't see any other areas where there was rub through or anything of the sorts, so I'm just gonna go keep touching up spots and check back in with you guys. I was doing it a little different today. I tried the head strap with the GoPro, so let me know what you guys think about that. It'll probably be better. Shout out to my dad for watching a video. He watched my rear main seal video and told me that I should get a head strap. So I had a head strap for the GoPro, so I'm gonna try that out. That way you guys don't have to watch me fumbling with tools in one hand and trying to hold the camera with the other hand. So I'm gonna try and use that more often. The downside is GoPro battery life sucks, especially when it's cooler out or just when you're recording for like one long clip, it eats the batteries up. So I think I'm gonna have to get some more GoPro batteries. But overall, looking at the harness, it's looking pretty good. It has a ton of mileage on it, but it is in very good shape. I did realize that there was one other spot over here that had just a little crack in the loom, and you could see some exposed wires. No rubbing issue, no like rub through or anything. So we threw some more tape on top of it and we are good to go. So ultimately, this harness is ready to be laid across this motor, plugged into everything, and fire up and let this thing run. thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I know it was a shorter one, but I just wanted to show you the process of cleaning the harness and just going through it. I will be reluming some things, so I'll check back with you in one of the future upcoming videos. I'll just give you a little update on what I do end up reluming and what I end up covering with heat sleeving. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Stay tuned for more content, and I hope you had a good weekend. Have a good week.